Welcome back to the Black Shoe Diaries YouTube show. As always, your host, Patrick Kerbler, and I'm joined by Jarrett Sanina in his normal spot, and Tim, you're no longer in the bathroom in your normal spot as well. A truly sad week it's been in Happy Valley. I don't know how we ended up here, but we are back. Going to talk a little bit Northwestern, but I think a lot of bigger picture discussion once again tonight on the show, just kind of delving off of what we talked about on Saturday. But before we get into that, Tim, Jarrett, how are we doing on this Wednesday evening?
Well, Pat, I finally emerged from the bathroom to do the show with you guys after how many days has it been? 4, 5 days of just wallowing in misery over there. I guess I'm ready to turn the page and see another game. But I think I'm just more, in all seriousness, I'm over it at this point. I'm mostly checked out mentally, just kind of going for the motions rest of the season. We'll see if the team feels the same way I do, because, if they do, then, last week is going to look like a freaking picnic compared to what it'll look like this Saturday.
Jarrett, how are you feeling as we have a couple days to take things?
Yeah, it's kind of new territory just because we're not used to Penn State losing games like that. When they do lose, it's a big game, so which makes it a little bit more heartbreaking that they just came so close and couldn't get over the hump. But with that game, it was just they just flat out didn't deserve to win. They got out coached, they got outplayed. There was just a lot greater effort and emotion on the UCLA side, so. You just kind of took it for what it was, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I think I've just accepted a few different things about this team. So that's where I'm at right now, state of acceptance, I guess.
Yeah, so kind of what the rundown for today's show is going to be, again, just kind of recapping how we felt on Saturday and kind of where we are at now that I think we're all in a more rational, sane headspace. Not to say that our opinions have drastically changed. I can't say mine have drastically changed, but one of the tough things is coming on right after these games and trying to have coherent thoughts. So I just want to recap that. Like I said, we'll talk about Northwestern, and we're going to also do predictions for the rest of the season. There's been a lot of talk out there about what do we think, what will Penn State do the rest of the way? Is this a bowl team? Is this an 8-win team? Could they somehow go 9-3 or perhaps even 10-2? We'll discuss all that. But I think my first question is, again, going back to Saturday and even going back to the Oregon game, not to tie those two games together because they are very separate and different in how everything transpired, but they will be lumped together for the rest of eternity. Where do we think things went wrong, right? Penn State, a lot of people have joked in the offseason about Penn State being, generally overrated, when the complete opposite for most of James Franklin's tenure has been true, where either Penn State was underrated coming into the year or they were properly rated. You knew exactly what you were going to get from Penn State, right? They were going to beat the teams they were supposed to beat, usually in pretty comfortable fashion. They were going to play really good teams tight and probably lose at the end. So where did things go wrong that this year with, returning everyone that they returned with, it wasn't just Penn State fans pushing this narrative of, this being the year and this being a national championship contending team, right? There's plenty of people out there who picked Penn State to win the national championship that were not Penn State fans. So where do we think things went wrong that we're now looking at, October 8th, and Penn State is unranked?
So my thought, this is kind of what I alluded to when I said I accepted some things since Saturday. My thought is that heading into the year, my biggest concern about this team, and I'm sure a lot of people felt the same way, was that there was a lot of question marks kind of sprinkled here and there. And I think the issue, it was kind of easy to just kind of push that aside because he assumed, well, we have such great top-end talent leading the way that those guys can kind of mask some of the inexperience around them. And then also thinking that some of these other guys are going to develop quickly. And, by a few weeks in the season, you'd say, oh, yeah, we didn't actually have to be worried about this position group because all these guys have really proved themselves. I haven't seen a whole lot of development out of younger players. And then I think the big issue is that the players that we expected to be, potential All-Americans, all-time program greats, they haven't produced. I mean, you can say this for about any position group, honestly, but let's use the defensive line, for example. I thought Denai Dennis-Sutton might be the best pass rusher in the nation this year. Zane Durant was a preseason All-American, so you're expecting a wildly productive, disruptive presence from him in the middle of the defensive line. And, I think they're both very good players. I don't know if they're great players. They're definitely not, playing at an All-American level or producing that way. So I think when some of those guys, and it's not just I'm not just picking on those two. I've been across the board. A lot of these top end players that we were really excited about coming back just haven't really reached that level that you need to have to be a national title contender.
Other than Katron Allen, is anyone better than they were last season?
I wouldn't say better, but the only
right.
I was thinking about this. The only players that we were really excited about to return that could have went pro, I think, is Katron's performing very well, even though he's just, for whatever baffling reason, isn't getting the touches he should be getting.
They're going to talk about it, Jared. They've talked about it. They're going to talk about it.
Yeah, they'll talk about it some more. They'll talk about it after the game. They'll talk about it in December. If they didn't talk about it before that final drive against UCLA, when you absolutely need a touchdown to basically save your season, you still have Singleton out there. But I was going to say the only two players I really feel like have really produced the way we expected, or the other guys we were excited about, was Katron and I'll say Zakee Wheatley.
Yeah.
Too. I think he's performed at a very high level at the safety position. Outside of those guys, there's been a lot of, I don't necessarily want to, I guess disappointing is the correct word. It's just, they just didn't reach the level that we thought they were going to reach and that the team needed them to reach to become a national title contender.
Tim, where did this all go wrong?
I'd say maybe the players are just getting high on their own supply, but by supply I mean just reading all the articles and posts on the message boards about how great they were and how they were, going to be All-Americans and, lead this team to a national title run. And I don't know. I mean, just it's baffling. You return all these guys who've been so productive last year. I mean, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, Sutton, Zane Durant, Zakee Wheatley, and yes, even Drew Auer. I mean, I know people have to rag on him, but he made a pretty decent leap from year one to year two as a starter. And, we all thought that Andy Kolnick could maybe just get, maybe 10% more out of him and, make him good enough to, help engineer this offense to greater heights. And, none of that's really come true. And also the offensive line. I mean, you're returning 4 out of 5 starters. You got some quality backups behind them. Phil Troutwine was getting a lot of praise for the last few years, not just for recruiting, but also for coaching up these O-lines. And now, he's getting crapped on for, the lack of production from the offensive line, compared to the hype they were getting. So I'm not saying it's undeserved, but it's just, I guess I'm at a loss for words. I did not think it was going to implode like this.
Yeah, and the offensive line is such a huge reason for that too, because not only were they supposed to be a strength, but I mean, there was talk about them winning the Joe Moore Award, and I thought that was very heck, before the season, I remember bringing up the point and talking about some of these great Alabama teams under Saban where they didn't do anything flashy at all in offense. They just had great offensive linemen who were going to, who would go on the NFL, and they just went around and executed and just opened up running lanes, and they had some really good experienced running backs behind them. So, I mean, I was thinking best case scenario, it's a lot easier said than done. Every team would love to do that, and hardly any can. But I was thinking we may actually have the team to do that. And not only did they not even come close to that, they're just bad. Yeah. I mean, you can't get a push. They can't even do much against bad defenses, bad front sevens. I mean, that 4th and 2, they couldn't even block anyone against UCLA, who is, I think, 123rd in rushing defense in the nation heading into that game against some pretty weak competition. So I do. Before we move on, I want to ask a quick trivia question to kind of allude to this point. But so going back, this is only a few months ago, so there's a good chance you guys will remember this. But going back to Big Ten Media Days, there was a vote for all the preseason awards. Preseason Offensive Player of the Year was for the Big Ten was Jeremiah Smith. Obviously, do you guys know who was number 2 and number 3?
My guess would be number 2 is Nick Singleton, and number 3 was Drew Aller.
You're 100% right. Yeah. Yep. And if you think about who the best top performers are in the Big Ten right now, and you're not a Penn State fan or you don't cover Penn State specifically, those 2 names wouldn't even come to mind.
It's funny you mentioned Big Ten Media Day because right when I tried to wrap my head around like how are we at this point, and there's no like one answer. And I was talking about this on Twitter of like I've seen some people say lack of effort and stuff like that. Like I don't necessarily think that this team like doesn't care or doesn't want to win. And like, that's like part of the frustration of it. Like, okay, like you don't lose to UCLA if Penn State's completely locked in and firing on all cylinders. So, I do understand like maybe the effort isn't where it needs to be, but I just don't look at, this team that has won a lot. These guys have won a lot that, decided like Nick Singleton, Kate Allen. I know I say this every time, but these guys decided to come back to Penn State. They want to be here. So it's like, how did things go this poorly? And the only thing that makes sense to me is that I remember at Big Ten Media Day, the cover 3 guys, Chip Patterson, I think specifically was one who said like this Penn State team has like, they have this aura about them, this vibe that like they think that they're good and they're like ready to prove it, like that type of thing. And I just wonder if in that lead up to the Oregon game, and we talked about this, like what is a game week like versus Oregon versus a game week like versus Villanova? Because it just felt like the Penn State team did not come out with whatever like vibe and aura or whatever like Chip Patterson was talking about. I felt like Oregon was the one that was like kind of dictating the game more. And the same way in the lead up to that Oregon game, I talked about, this can be like a 2016 Ohio State. Like you win that game, you get the monkey off your back, and all of a sudden everything changes. Unfortunately, the inverse is also true, where they lose that game to Oregon, and instead of, locking down and fighting out of it, it just truly completely broke them. Because is there like any doubt whatsoever that if Penn State had beaten Oregon, that they go on the road to UCLA and they win probably pretty comfortably, right? Like, does anyone think that UCLA knocks off Penn State if they lose to Oregon, or if they had beaten Oregon rather?
Probably not.
I feel like they win. Maybe it would still be. It still might be a bit ugly, like the whole cross country travel factor, and perhaps they get caught a bit flat footed from Jerry Neuheisel, who they have 0 game tape on his offense. But I think the effort would have been better, because I think effort was a real issue against the UCLA team. I don't just feel, especially, there's no reason the defense should have been so out of position or tackling so poorly like they did. I think you would have seen a much better effort out of those guys had they been coming off a win.
Yeah.
And they would have won. They would have won by probably a couple touchdowns at least. So, yeah, I tend to agree. If they win the Oregon game, then they probably don't lose UCLA.
I just think that, like, right, it's easy for fans to see a team lose, and you're just like, oh, they don't care. They're not trying their hardest. Like, try harder. That's all you have to do, try harder. Like, I don't think it's, like, that simple. And I just kind of think that the same questions that I had about, like, what was that week going into Oregon like? What was that week going into UCLA like? Because clearly it wasn't like that. Is, in my mind, that is where the game was lost, from coaching decisions for Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki to the way the team prepared. Like, I don't necessarily think that, like, the want and the care and the actual preparation of it, like, was wrong, but was it the, like, right type of preparation, right? It's almost like when a student, like, studies really hard for a test, and then they get to the test and they realize that there's some questions that they forgot, like, oh, I was supposed to look at, like, that lesson as well. Like, okay, it's on the student for not knowing that they were supposed to study that part, but the student still, like, wanted to win, or the student still, like, wanted to do good on the test, and they still put the hours in. I almost feel like that's where Penn State was at, where they did not take care of the wound against Oregon, and it kind of just delved into UCLA and this team that I just don't think that they had the right mentality, to be honest with you, right? Like, I think back to like the 2016 season, and we talk about like second half team. That second half team came from, I guess, a little bit the Minnesota game, but that Ohio State game where they were trailing at halftime, they come back and win. And after that, this team, they have a belief about them that no matter what happened, that they could come back and win any single game, no matter what happened. And unfortunately, I just think that the inverse happened with Oregon, where they couldn't get that monkey off their back, and now all of a sudden it's just bleeding into everything else, and you almost just expect the worst. So,
interesting comment here from Evil Franklin Fanatic. Franklin's a professor teaching students with the wrong textbook. I'm guessing that means like even in terms of how they approaches things with the whole 1-0 this week mentality. I mean, I can't say I disagree with that. I think Franklin also maybe look into how, you know, he and the staff are preparing for each week. You know, I mean, I understand where the 1-0 this week mentality comes from, but also, I mean, can you really pretend though that's, you know, a game against Oregon matters the same as a game against Villanova or FIU
and these guys aren't robots, right? They have emotions,
these are college kids. These are not. And speaking of which, Pat, I saw a very interesting tweet from Joel Haas, statecollege.com, Penn State beat writer. It says Drew Hours said he's in Lash Building from 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. and doesn't really go anywhere else on campus during the season. He's taking one class this semester and said he does schoolwork in the Morgan Academic Center, which is connected to Lash. So, you know, he's there all day long at the football building, doesn't actually go to class, takes it online, doesn't really interact with the student body. I mean, that was kind of the thing with, you know, college football in years past. You know, think about a decade ago, you know, guys were still going to class. They were still interacting with the student body regularly. It's just, they're kind of shielded, you know, like I said, Pat, like you're kind of like being treated like robots. And I just don't know if this is healthy. I understand LTFI, but also I feel like these guys just need to go be like dumb college kids, you know, like go out, get drunk, do whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Reason.
I just think that like one of the things that I think Franklin misses, and he's so like neurodivergent about everything. Like I can think back to the 2017 Michigan State game with the weather delay. And the first thing after that game was, yeah, we weren't prepared for a 3-hour weather delay. We're going to talk to some sports scientists and blah, blah, blah. Like the second that like he feels like he doesn't have control and something goes like not exactly his way, it just like ticks off in his brain where he's like starts a short circuit. And
to be fair, Pat, it did pay off several years later against West Virginia when they had a, 2.5-hour weather delay.
They remember to bring some snacks with them, and
yeah, but right, like at some point, it's like, hey, this is just like a game of football. Like we don't need, like, it's just a weather delay, James. Like it's gonna be okay, and it's the same thing. Like with even after the UCLA game, the travel. Like, man, I don't want to hear about the travel. Like time and place, dude. Time and freaking place. I understand.
Okay. I mean, Oregon had a heck of a long flight to get.
And they had to stay in Altoona. They had to stay in freaking Altoona, like 45 minutes away from State College.
But that's the thing. Do you think Dan Lanning was telling like the Oregon players, like, man, guys, I know it's not ideal. We're staying in Altoona, but it is what it is. Like, no, it is what it is. You go and you play the football game. Then you're fine. You're okay. You just flew, in a nice airplane, probably by yourself. Like.
Yeah. So anyway, something I'm really wondering about if it's going to have like a long-term impact, and I know this is it's something like I know all the fan base was losing their minds, us included. But at the end of the half, with that whole sequence where they basically just let the clock run out rather than trying to be aggressive and score. I mean, players are smart. They know what's going on, and they're thinking about all the all the long days, all the early morning weightlifting sessions, everything it took to get them here. And now they've got a situation where they're find themselves in a hole, and rather than trying to, let's score, we feel like we're the better team. Let's get some points here, and have a better second half, come out a little more prepared. they just let that chance just slip away. And they basically just kind of waved the white flag in that instance and just said, "Well, we don't want to give them the ball back," which they ended up giving anyway. And UCLA
I was gonna say they did the in between
a field goal, so it didn't even accomplish that much. But just the fact they weren't even being aggressive or even like trying to do anything with that possession, even though they were in UCLA territory. I just wonder what type of trickle down effect that has on the team and the players and just their psyche of if they're under the belief that, okay, even our coaches don't believe in us, then what are we doing here?
And even during that, James pulled down his mic at one point because, right, he usually keeps the mic up. Pulled down his mic at one point and said something along the lines of, "Hey, we got to get it moving, guys. You're the head coach. You're the head coach. Like, call a timeout if you want to call a timeout. Like, what like is that?" And you talk about like right preparation and stuff like that. Like, how is that not understood going into that drive of we're going to try to milk the clock and make sure UCLA doesn't get the ball back, but we also want to like make a decision. And as the head coach, like, okay, I understand sometimes there's confusion, and hey, credit to James for like apparently like really not being involved with the offense and the defense. Like he lets those guys do their things apparently to like sometimes hurt Penn State. But when that's happening and you're James Franklin, like you're the head coach, man. Call a timeout if you don't like what things are going on. Don't just sit there with your arms folded and not do anything. You know?
I mean, it was just like last year that the infamous goal line stand against Ohio State, and he was asked after the game about, well, why didn't Tyler Warren, your Heisman Trophy candidate, why didn't he get one touch in that sequence? And he said, well, I guess I forget how he phrased it, but basically he said he just wasn't going to get involved. And it's like you said, you're the head coach. They'd be thinking in this situation. I mean, he's a special type of player. You just run a wildcat with them and just let them try to stop him, instead of trying to get all gimmicky and having Vega run in motion and all this other stuff that just clearly didn't work.
Nick Singleton and Kate Allen, same thing of the we're going to talk about it, and usually it's the position coach's call who plays. Like
okay, James. You need a touchdown. You go over and say, put Katron in this effing game right now.
It's like, hey, James, you're the head coach, and you say it ends everything after blaming everyone else. And it's my responsibility. You're down by 7. You need 35 yards. I don't care if it's a 2-minute situation where they clearly like Singleton more. Get Katron in the game, dude. You're the head coach. You can make that call. And that's just like where it is frustrating with James at this point. And I know that this is like, right, when things are going well, we kind of ignore the stuff, and things go bad and we talk about it. But I just don't know if he's got it. I mean, and that's kind of what I want to like wrap this up with, just because the three of us were all on Saturday saying like, this has to be it for James. Like it just has to be it. I'm still in the same spot that I am on Saturday. I don't think that he's going to get fired, like basically under any circumstance, both from a money perspective, but even if the buyout was $15 million, I just think that you look at where this has happened before. With Notre Dame, they went 4-8 in 2016, I believe it was. Maybe it was 2016. Maybe it was 2017, one of those years, right? Look at Mike Norvell at Florida State, same thing. D'Antonio, even at Michigan State back in the day. Like when you have the success that James has had, they're generally your AD, your school will usually give you a year to figure it out. There's a lot of different dynamics at Penn State compared to what D'Antonio had at Michigan State, where he was a god there. Brian Kelly, Notre Dame, I think at that point they were still on pretty good terms. Mike Norvell, Florida State, I guess a little bit different, but I'm a little surprised at how many different Penn State podcasts there are out there. Like I listened to every single one I could find. I thought that we were the only one. I had no idea there were any other Penn State football podcasts. Apparently there's like 16 of them, but from every single one that I heard and trying to gain these insights, almost everyone is in agreement, Penn State fan wise, that this should be James's last year. And truthfully, the only place that I heard was BWI. I think that they're the only ones that are, perhaps they're the rational ones in this, but they're the only ones that are kind of saying like, hey, like give James some time, or at least like not 100% firing type thing. But where are you guys at with what the tenure is for James?
So yeah, you mentioned, I do agree. He won't be fired. I'm using fired in air quotes. I think one of two things happens. Either, they at the end of the season, he and Pat Kraft sit down and they have a mutual agreement to part ways. And I'll say the buyout, from my understanding, that's not a lump sum payment. They would just pay him. I believe it goes down by $8 million every year. So they would just pay $8 million every year for 2031 if they just outright fired him without cause. But when I say mutual parting ways, maybe they agree to some lower buyout paid in a lump sum. Like, I don't know. I'm just making up a number here, like 20, 30 million or something, lump sum for him he can do whatever. He can go look for other jobs, or he can just, take a year or two off, do TV like Dan Mullen did at ESPN, and then, take a head coaching job again. Or what I could also see happening, and this is, again, I don't know what he's thinking, but there's some people that are pointing out that he doesn't seem like a guy who really wants to be at Penn State anymore at this juncture. And there's, you're going to see more and more power conference jobs opening up as we get into November. And I'm sure you guys saw in the news today, there's rumors that Bill Belichick might be getting fired at UNC like this week even. So that's one potential landing spot for him. Florida opens up and say they strike out on their top target, Lane Kiffin. I have to imagine Franklin. I'll say this. I will not be surprised if I start seeing in the news that James Franklin is a candidate for, X, Y, and Z jobs, I'm sure Jimmy Sexton or whoever his agent is now is probably, I bet he's working back channels with certain athletic directors as we speak. So I just easily see it playing out in one of those two ways. But I do agree. He's not going to just get straight up fired.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Couple things before I kick it to you, Jarrett. One, good point on the buyout stuff. We don't know 100% for sure, but right, that was one of the things with Texas A&M. The fact that they ended up still firing Jimbo Fisher, and that was $70 million, I believe. He had like lump sum payments that were due like immediately. Like, I don't know exactly how it all worked, but there was something where they owed him a certain amount 30 days and a certain amount 60 days. So it wasn't even this process of, you get your normal basic pay like every month. Like, I know Kellen DeBoer, Alabama, when they had Boston, Florida State, there was some reporting around him of, okay, he has this massive buyout, but it's really just, they would just owe him his normal, biweekly. I don't know how often James gets paid, but I would assume he's biweekly, right? His biweekly rate. What happens with the buyout, though, and maybe I'm wrong on this, is as soon as James or whatever coach gets fired, takes another job, Penn State should not have to be paying James, right? So that's the important part of it. And that's what you were saying, Tim, as far as some of these other jobs go, right? If like the mutual parting way,
the other school that hired him would be on the hook for the buyout then.
Well, so there's a different, so if James wants to buy himself out of the Penn State contract, that's like, I think $2 or $3 million, which
it's a lot cheaper if another school just hires him away.
And my guess is that Penn State will waive it. And a lot of these circumstances, especially when it's like $2 or $3 million, like that's really not going to make or break any athletic department. Like they're more than likely just let him go. But what I'm saying though, like if Penn State were to fire James and he takes a year off and then they still owe him $40 million because the buyout, everyone's saying it's $56 million, it's $48 million. As a 12-1, it's $48 million because he will have been paid his $8 million up to there. Once he takes another job, Penn State, and maybe I'm wrong here, 100%, I don't have a legal degree. My understanding is Penn State wouldn't have to continue to pay him once he gets another job. There's usually language in the contract of like, once you make a certain percentage of whatever your buyout is at another school, Penn State would no longer be on the hook. So that is the only, and I don't think Penn State fires him at all, but that is just one of the only few things of, if they do fire him, it's not like they need to have $48 million lump sum paid to him. They just need to be ready for the circumstance of, all right, I'm James Franklin, like I'm just not going to work anymore, and I will just collect the same way that Jimbo Fisher, right, has just been collecting his check from Texas A&M. One other thing, and I'm sorry, Jarrett, that I'm rambling here. My concern with James, and again, I do think it's more likely of like, if he goes, he's probably going to try to find a landing spot, whether that's North Carolina, whether that's Virginia Tech, whether that's Arkansas, Florida, Auburn, whoever. We'll see what happens with this cycle. My concern with James is he's a super stubborn person, And he clearly does not like change. Like for all the, James Verning with other jobs, and he's talked about, if he knew what he knew in 2014 about, the Penn State administration at the time, he wouldn't have taken the job, and it was a headache and this, that, the other thing. For all the, sort of complaining that he's done about Penn State and how he hasn't had alignment until 2023, during that entire time, there's only one time, 2021, that he seriously tried to go, and that was with USC. Oddly enough, he lost in 9 overtimes, and all of a sudden, USC was no longer interested in hiring a coach like that. That's my one concern, where, right, I think that things are pretty bad right now between him and the school, and I don't necessarily mean like Pat Kraft and Nili Pendapudi, but, just the program at large. Clearly, it's been a rough couple of weeks. But and we'll talk about like our season predictions. I wonder what happens if they go 9-3. What happens if they go 8-4? Where, okay, it's an absolute failure of a season, but it's not this complete bottoming, falling out. Does he think I can rebuild this? I can recapture this, and it's a lot easier doing it at Penn State, where you have top 15 recruiting classes back to back to back. You have this coaching staff, than starting over completely new. Like at North Carolina, like that is a program that the bottom has fallen out at. That is a 3-year rebuild at the very least. Does James want to put himself through that? Or does he think, I can make it work here because I'm stubborn like that and I don't like change? That is what we don't know. But Jarrett, go ahead.
I'll probably keep this brief because I agreed with pretty much what Tim was saying. I don't expect it to be one or the other where he necessarily gets fired or resigns. But I am kind of starting to lean towards there's some type of agreement where they just decide, okay, the time has come for everyone to go a different direction, and we'll work something out here. Because obviously you have to take the contract and the buy and all that stuff in play as well. It's just difficult because Franklin, and I know some people won't agree with me, but I do think it's a good color on him. I like it. I just don't think that Franklin is just this awful, terrible coach that can't get the job done and anything like that. I mean, he's brought the program so far along from when he started here. Yep. The roster is just completely different in terms of just high-end talent and depth. They've won a ton of games. He's done so much to help with the facilities and built the program. So part of me does kind of think, okay, well, he put all that work, those long-term plans in place, then, and knowing he can be kind of a stubborn person, that then maybe he's going to say, yeah, I'm going to stick this out. But it just does kind of feel like for everyone's benefit that, Franklin just doesn't seem to be the one who's going to be able to. He's able to really build a program, get him to this point, but just doesn't feel like the type. And I don't know if that belief is there that he's going to be the one to bust through and get Penn State national championship. And it's kind of gotten to the point where I wouldn't say that's necessarily the expectation, but that is the plan to be among the best in the nation and to have a chance to win the national title, on a pretty regular basis. And I just don't know if that belief can be there anymore. So if it's time to move on, then I think that's the reason why. And I think they may just decide to go their separate ways.
No, and that's the thing. And that's why, I do North Carolina, I think it would be like a grand slam hire for them. I don't see how James Franklin, North Carolina, provided that he has the backing that we think North Carolina does. I mean, NIL is always such a wrench in everything now, where you don't know how much some teams are paying versus how much some teams aren't paying. But provided things are what we think they are at North Carolina, it's tough for me to see James not getting them to 9 wins by year.
Get that sweet MJ money.
Yeah, no, exactly. Just want to point out, and Evil Franklin Fanatic just says, for real, the hungry smaller program somewhere, I'm pushing to acquire James. Penn State obviously needs someone else to get to the next level. And yeah, I think that's really the main takeaway among most Penn State fans. I don't think James is a bad head coach. I don't even necessarily think Penn State, if they brought back James, they couldn't go 9-3 or 10-2 next year. It's just that we have seen this freaking story before, man. I'm done with it. And I've mentioned this to so many friends. I don't know if I mentioned this on here or not. One of the biggest lies that people don't understand, sports fans, we do not want consistency. We want hope. That is what we want, right? I want this idea of thinking my team can win the national title, right? If I'm a Penn State fan. For Penn State basketball, we want the idea of we can make the tournament once every 3 or 4 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you lose that as the coach, right? And this was like the great debate with Pat Chambers, and now it's now part of the debate with James Franklin of like, but the guy you get next might not be better. Okay, like maybe he won't be, maybe he will be, and that's the entire point. Like you go out and you try something new, and with James at this point, like I think that going somewhere else is not only good for Penn State. I truly do think it's good for him. I think him going to North Carolina or Florida or Auburn, I think he could have a lot of success there. And it's just a restart for everyone. And as Ilya Franklin Fanatic says, growth means change.
And to your point about hope, I'll say to your point about hope, I mean, just think a few weeks ago during the season preview before Penn State played it down in football, and we were going game by game, and I'm pretty certain all three of us were in sync that, well, I don't know if this team's going to be able to win in Columbus. They probably won't. I'm pretty certain we all counted that as a loss, and at the very least, we said, well, maybe they have the ability to do it, but we'll believe it when we see it. So, I mean, just consider all the talent they had coming back. They were number 2 in the polls, getting number 1 votes, and we're still saying, I don't know if they can. They probably can't beat Ohio State based off of what we know about this team and this program.
No, exactly. All right, let's move on. We're not going to get too far into Northwestern. Do any of you guys have Northwestern specific things to say other than they have a pretty good defense. I'm kind of going to repeat myself from what I said during the season preview show, but Preston Stone is a very average, mediocre quarterback. I like the wide receiver, Griffin Wild, who is a transfer from South Dakota State. That kid, if he wants to play somewhere else next year, somewhere higher, he's going to be able to. And I like their defense, specifically their defensive line. It's a middle of the pack Big Ten defense, which is better than UCLA was. So any Northwestern specific takes that you have about their team?
Yeah, my thought is, I mean, they do a pretty decent defense, actually, only allowing 17 points a game. And the thing that kind of concerns me about that is like I mentioned earlier, Penn State's offense struggles against bad defenses. So they're going to have to produce against a good defense, maybe top 35 in the nation or so if they're middle of the pack Big Ten. So yeah, that's not a great thought considering how they looked against some pretty bad front sevens, and Northwestern's more capable. The thing that I don't think Northwestern's offense is that great. I will mention about Preston Stone though. When I was looking at his numbers, he has 7 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. He threw 4 of those in week 1 against Tulane. So obviously he had a pretty bad day. He's only thrown 2 since then. Both of those were against Oregon. The other 3 games, he had 0 picks. So not quite as turnover prone as I was hoping when I first saw that. But he's fairly efficient. And I think the thing that worries me about not just Northwestern's offense, but every offense will play moving forward, I do kind of wonder if there's a blueprint on how to move the ball against this Penn State defense. And if you have Big Ten athletes, whether you're a good Big Ten team, a bad Big Ten team, one's going to make a bowl or not, then you should have the personnel to move the ball against the defense if it does turn out to have some significant holes, which I think we'll probably get a little bit more in depth in that. But I am a little concerned that is the case with the defense, as good as they look for parts of the season. I don't know if it's necessarily. Sure, they had a bad game and a lack of they didn't seem prepared. It wasn't a whole lot of effort, I don't think. But I do kind of wonder if there were some bigger problems other than that can't be fixed. And now that the cat's out of the bag, then we may kind of. I guess we'll learn what this defense is all about starting this Saturday.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to add. Just that. Well, the good news is Preston Stone is your classic pocket passer. He's not exactly a threat of his legs like Nico was. So I can guarantee they won't get gashed as hard on the ground by the quarterback this weekend.
Famous last words, Tim. Famous last words.
True, I am playing with fire at this point, aren't I?
All right. Score predictions. What do we think we get from Penn State this weekend? It is, hey, I mean, you guys at the very least predicted last week that Penn State was going to struggle a bit with UCLA. I really thought that they would come out and, I'm not saying dominate from the beginning, but I thought it was going to be a get right game of sorts that we could do our normal song and dance of, be one loss going to Ohio State like the gleeful idiots that we are. And that clearly has not happened. So Penn State did 22.5-point favorite, which, not to give away my pick, that is very high. So, Tim, we'll start with you. What do we have score prediction wise from Penn State this weekend?
Yeah, I definitely, just like with beating Ohio State, I will believe they cover a spread when I see it. I think, again, it's going to be, I think the defense will come out looking better than they did last week. I think part of it was lack of effort and just thinking they could waltz out there and just, beat UCLA with just no resistance. I think they'll be a little more locked in this week and against a much lesser Northwestern offense. And I have a 27-17 Penn State. I do think the offense, as clunky as it is at times, I do think they will still put up some points. And I think I could see them being aided by a short field as a result of a Northwestern turnover, which could result in a touchdown. So I don't know. I know 27 might sound a bit high given Northwestern's defense, but I'm going with 27-17. Good guys.
Jared?
I just want to say last week my prediction for the first half was Penn State would be up 7-0, and I got that prediction half right. Penn State did just have 7 points at halftime. Wasn't expecting the offensive explosion at UCLA, but enough of that. My prediction, honestly, I'm actually very close to Tim. My prediction is 27-20. I do have some concerns about the offense because, this offensive line has proved they can't really move, do much against a good front seven. So I am really concerned because if the offensive, if the ground game just isn't getting anything consistent, then it's all up to Drew. And that means that we need to rely on good Drew coming out, because if bad Drew comes out and they can't run the ball, then it could get pretty ugly, even against a team like Northwestern. So, I'm hoping I'm not being terribly optimistic. I think 22.5 points is absolutely crazy spread, and I'd be absolutely shocked if they win by that. I think they just have to come out with their hair on fire and just look better than they have all season. So I'm picking just a touchdown victory, and I'm not even certain how optimistic or confident I am in that pick because like I mentioned about the offense, and then also with the defenses, I think that they know that there's some holes and where to attack. I mean, look at last year's defense, for instance, great defense, but they had some coverage issues in the linebackers. And when teams kind of caught on to that, and if they had a quarterback who can get the ball quickly out of their hands, then, that was their kryptonite last season. And now I think they see a few areas that's going to be easy to attack, get guys out of position. And, I'm really concerned with the linebacker spot, honestly. And if that's just going to create some glaring holes that any, somewhat competent offense can attack.
Yeah. Same wavelength as you guys. I have it 28-14 Penn State. It's tough to feel confident about this team. Offense, defense, right? Like trying to wrap your head around like what could, the score be, and it's like, yet I don't feel good about predicting 28 points for the Penn State offense. I don't feel good about the idea that the defense is only gonna give up 2 scoring drives. So
yeah, and the defense has been so reliable these last few years, which just makes it a little more confusing because I remember like putting together predictions
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Like over the last few years, and they'd be playing like say Michigan State, and I'd say 41-10. I'd be thinking like, wait, can Michigan State actually score 10 points against Penn State's defense? I would change it to 41-3 or 41-6. And now it's just like, what if our defense is a problem? So it's this team has provided us with more questions than answers every week. So it's just getting to predict the outcome of a game has become an adventure.
Before we move on to our next segment, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the video if you haven't done so already. We did get like a bunch of subscribers from our last episode, which, I like to think, it was all Penn State fans, but I know there was a fair share of Ohio State and Notre Dame and Michigan fans and Indiana fans apparently who were watching us in our misery. Glad that we could hopefully make them laugh a little bit on Saturday, but that's fine. Please subscribe. We're at 319 subscribers. Let's get that up to, 330. It's 330.
Amazing what a historic loss does for your viewership numbers and subscribers.
11,000 views. Who would have thought? Yes. If you already subscribed, thank you. We greatly appreciate it. But if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It helps us out a ton, and like the video as well. All right, fellas, we're already 45 minutes into this, so we're going to expedite this process a little bit. But I just wanted to go through the season, the schedule, and kind of pick out where we think Penn State wins, where we think Penn State loses. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, this is the rest of the season, fellas. So Northwestern, all three of us are saying is a win. What are we thinking about Iowa? Now officially a night kick. Jarrett, you got it as a loss?
Mm-hmm.
Tim?
Oddly enough, I mean, I could be dead wrong. I get a weird feeling that Penn State's going to win that somehow. And before anyone chimes in of, well, it's a night game at Kinnick, guess what? Penn State has won the last 3 night games at Kinnick in a row. So,
yeah, I was just really good about getting teams just like down to their not their level, but just kind of play the game that they want to play. And I just feel with this offense and a bad offensive line that's going to be a really big challenge for Penn State. So
I think I factored
that immediately put that loss. I thought about the way it could play out.
I also have this as a win. Penn State is not as bad as they showed against UCLA, and I understand that it can be tough. As I just said, with like picking the Northwestern game, like it can be tough to find like the good things in Penn State. Penn State is not as bad as they showed against UCLA, and yeah, I think that they can go to Iowa and they can win. So I have that as a win as well. We then thankfully get a freaking bye week. God, I'm gonna love that bye week more than I loved anything in my life. Then we go to Ohio State. Fellas, I just purchased my plane ticket to Columbus this week because I made a commitment to my friends that I would I would go. Probably should have waited a couple weeks, but so I will be at that game. It's the last Penn State game at the Shoe for a little bit with the Big Ten having expanded.
I hope they're buying you dinner at Urban Meyer's Chop House, Pat.
I have a friend's parents. They live there, so they give us free room and board. It's a great weekend.
Okay.
I'm just joking. I'm looking forward to the weekend itself. Maybe not so much the game, but we all have this as a loss, I assume, right? I mean, Ohio State just looks somehow even better this year, especially defense. I went on Zach Stako's podcast in the preseason, and we talked about. I said how I don't really know about Matt Patricia. You know, I'm an Eagles fan. He didn't really work out for us. You know, NFL guys going to college don't know. I was wrong. Matt Patricia, apparently good defensive coordinator. So that one is a loss. Indiana, home game. Indiana probably not going to be top 10 ranked at that point because they will have lost to Oregon probably this weekend. We'll get more into that. But
Pat, I think if it's a close game like I think it will be, and I don't think Indiana would drop very far. They'd have a few more games, I believe, before Penn State to potentially get back into the top 10. So they could certainly be a top 10 team again when they come to State College. But, man, I got to give this Indiana team credit. They just look sharper, just better coached. I don't know about their depth per se, but their starting talent's pretty damn good. This is probably their best shot ever to beat Penn State in Happy Valley. And I think they shoot their shot and make it. So I'm going to say that's a loss.
Jared. I'm going loss too. I think Indiana's, we'll learn more this weekend, but I think they're much better than line of scrimmage on both sides than they were a year ago when they kind of caught everyone by surprise. And just the way these teams match up, I just think it's going to be similar to Oregon, even if the defense plays great and they keep it close. I just feel like Indiana's going to do a better job of moving the ball compared to Penn State, and eventually that'll result in a victory for them.
I also have Indiana winning this as well. I don't think that they're particularly good, and we'll talk about that. And Indiana, Oregon's one of the games that we're going to talk about here at the end of the episode. But I think they're good enough to beat Penn State, and I think Mendoza at quarterback is someone who can give Penn State fits and find the holes in the zone and stuff like that. So. Yeah, I have Indiana winning that one, especially Penn State coming off that Ohio State game. Like, I don't know if there's questions about like Penn State's motivation right now, but once they lose one more, it's like you are definitely 100% like done. Like there is no playoff, there is no nothing. They can lie to themselves now and say, hey, if we win out. So that's the other side of things. If they, coming off a loss against Ohio State. What about Michigan State going to Sparty? What are we thinking? Win-loss?
I guess I don't know too much about Michigan State. I haven't paid a lot of attention, but they seem shaky, I guess, in certain aspects, especially defensively. But hey, so is UCLA. But man, for some weird reason, I think this is Penn State's gonna pull a win out of their collective asses.
I think this is a win as well, Jared.
Yeah, I definitely have it as a win. I don't think Michigan State's that good. I think they can definitely. I can't recall their quarterback's name, but definitely force him. Yeah, thank you. They could definitely force him into some bad decisions. If they do lose this game, that means though that the wheels have officially fallen off. Considering they probably have 2, maybe 3 losses coming into it. So
I think we can see that if they lose to Northwestern this Saturday. So
Nebraska. Matt Rule's homecoming to Penn State. I've heard a lot of talk about like what is the funniest scenario for how this Penn State season goes, and most people have said, "Oh, this is when you beat Ohio State." The actual funniest scenario is anything that involves Nebraska beating Penn State, because good chance Nebraska is ranked by this point. Their schedule's not super tough. I think USC's really USC, Minnesota. Can't think of everyone else on their schedule, but they don't play any more ranked teams, which is Matt Rule's bugaboo. For the plot, I think that Nebraska wins this game. Matt Rule comes in and beats James Franklin, and that is where I think, I don't want to say is the nail in the coffin, but that is where maybe it clicks with James. This isn't working out. I really have lost powerful people, so I have Nebraska winning this one.
If Penn State is ranked in this game, I'm especially confident they win this because, as I've said, probably ad nauseum by now, that Matt Rule is diet James Franklin. He's 2-23 against ranked opponents, and those 2 wins came when he was head coach at Temple. So he is winless against ranked teams from his time at Baylor and currently at Nebraska. So Penn State's top 25 team. I like Penn State here. Even without that, though, I don't know. I'm still not that sold on Nebraska. They have some issues in the trenches. Dylan Raiola he's good, but he kind of reminds me of Drew Allar in some ways. Like he's still, tends to make some ill-advised throws, and
absolutely
he likes to think he's Pat Mahomes. Next coming of Pat Mahomes, likes to sidearm.
Yeah, I've seen him do sidearms and just different things when he absolutely did not have to.
Yeah, that and just I'm not impressed with their running game. I don't know. Again, it could be right, Pat. Maybe Nebraska does win this, but I'm gonna have to see it to believe it.
Yeah, I'd say this is a win for Penn State, but again, that's kind of assuming that they're playing to their potential and everything like that. Who knows what things are going to be like in a few weeks? If they're out of the playoff picture, or if some starters start to get benched to give other guys opportunities, and if they are, they have a few more losses between now and then. I'm curious what the atmosphere will be like in Beaver Stadium. It won't be like your typical senior day where it just feels like Penn State just plays at a higher level ever since I can remember. So it'll be interesting to see where things are there for both in the stands and on the field. I'll count it as a win for now, though.
Yeah, that would be senior day for Drew Allar and Nick Singleton, and man. It would be dark times. Rutgers ending the season at Rutgers. I liked Rutgers a lot going into this year. Their defense has had a lot of injuries. I still think that Penn State can win this one. So I like Penn State to win. Where are you guys at?
I got Penn State too. And my thinking goes, look, if Rutgers couldn't beat Penn State in 2014 when they were at their lowest point of the sanctions, and they couldn't beat Penn State in 2021 when, half the roster was decimated by the flu, then it's like, when are they going to beat them? And again, it's like with Penn State beating Ohio State. I'll believe it when I see it. That Rutgers
famous last words.
Last words. Again, I'll believe it when I see it. Give me Penn State.
Yeah, things are bad right now, but they're not quite predict a loss against Rutgers bad. So I'm going to win to close out the regular season.
All right, so I have it at 7-5. if I didn't do the Nebraska joke, I think 8-4 is like kind of the area where everyone is kind of at. Because I think that they could be Indiana. Like I wouldn't be. Okay, I should say I wouldn't be shocked, but I think every game is winnable except for Ohio State. Not that they win every game, but that like it wouldn't shock me if Penn State beat Indiana. It also wouldn't shock me if Penn State went to Michigan State and lost. So I think 8-4, 7-5. I'd be pretty surprised if they won all those games that went 9-3, and I'm not even including the Ohio State game. They're not going to beat Ohio State. I will legitimately be putting thousands of dollars on Ohio State money line. There's no way Penn State wins. So I think you guys were also around the 8-4, 7-5 area. If I wasn't,
I had 8-4.
Yeah, I had 7-5. The only thing that concerns me about that is I also have 3 losses in a row predicted. So do they come out of a 3-game losing streak and win the last 3 games that they should? So. Yeah, well, I think we'll just have to wait and find out because we're not certain how this team is gonna, who's gonna show up from week to week and what the team's gonna look like in a few weeks from now. They could bounce back and be on fire and really play their potential and just kind of show last week was a fluke, or things could really, go sideways in a hurry here.
Yeah, and we're already pretty deep in this episode, so we can save it for certainly Saturdays or next week's. I'm just curious. I've seen a lot of Penn State fans basically say that they're rooting against the team, right? That losses at this point would be good because it puts more fire on Franklin. And while I understand that, I think you also, in a way, you want him not to completely tank his value too. So like 8-4 feels like the nice area of, okay, the season was an absolute failure, but it's not the 6-6, 5-7, even 7-5 type thing.
It still make him attractive for potential job openings.
Yeah. All right. Which, by the way, guys, I know I said Saturday. We will not be doing a post-game show the day of the game. I will be at the game. Tim very well may be at the game. Jared is unavailable as well. So we're going to get together Sunday afternoon. We're still figuring out exact timing, but it has nothing to do with Penn State season completely going down the toilet. This is I've had tickets for homecoming for a while, and Tim.
I promise you, if I hope it doesn't happen, but if they do lose to Northwestern, I will do another show from the bathroom.
Yes, exactly. So,
we won't quit on you guys, even if the team does.
I was going to say the show is going nowhere, but just as a heads up, we won't have any immediate post game show. We'll be doing it Sunday and then be back for Wednesday. But just as a heads up, all right, 3 games, national games that we're going to be picking. Just as a reminder from last week. I went 0-3, so my 3-0 to 0-3 stretch is perfect. Thanks, Florida State and Louisville, and can't remember the other game that we picked. So I'm 3-9 on the year. Jared is 4-8, and Tim, you are 6-6. You're running at 500, which hey, it's pretty good. So 3 games this week. It's a great college football week. A great college football week. We start with Alabama at Mizzou. The Tigers are 3.5 dogs at home. Big game for Bo Prabula and Eli Drinkwitz. What do we think happens here?
I think I like Bama to cover this. I think this is a real step up in competition for Bo Prabula and Missouri. I think they'll put up a fight. I mean, it'll be a tight game, but I think Bama's offense might be a bit too much, and I think their defense can come up with enough stops and keep that offense at bay.
Yeah, I'm going to take Alabama too and give the points. They've really impressed me the way they played the last couple of weeks, and especially considering they had a pretty disastrous week 1 against Florida State. But I just feel like they've really improved on both sides of the ball, and they're a resilient team. I mean, they were very impressive winning the road against Georgia. Vanderbilt gave them a heck of a game, heck of a first half. In the second half, the defense locked them down, and offense kept just kind of chugging along and beating them down a little bit, wearing them out. So, I think Missouri's a pretty decent team this year. Obviously, Bo's been having a good season. Interesting enough, and I'm assuming it's next week. Missouri still hasn't played a road game yet. But so we'll learn more about them in the future. But anyway, I like Alabama to be able to pull this one out by at least 3.5.
Yeah, this is a big step up for Missouri. Their other toughest game was either Kansas or South Carolina. So I know those teams, I'm particularly impressed with. I think they're both like 6-6, 7-5, level programs. So yeah, think Bama has kind of figured things out and is on a roll now. So I like Alabama -3.5 as well. We go to the Big Ten, where Ohio State is heading to Champaign to take on the Illini. The spread on this is 14.5. Illinois, the big home dog. Put me down for Ohio State. This is 100% clear as day. Ohio State is going to blow them out. So what are you guys thinking?
I really want to take Illinois and all those points, but even if I feel like best case scenario, they keep it close and kind of stay in striking distance. But I think, best case scenario, Ohio State's winning like 30-20, with a few minutes left and the Buckeyes get a pick six or something. So I just, when it's Ohio State, I always just assume they just get that one extra touchdown towards the end. They just make that one
always
extra.
Works out for them.
Exactly. Yeah. For coming from a program where it seems like it never happens. So, I'm taking Ohio State, and I think they definitely win by 17 or more.
I'm taking the Buckeyes as well. I think Illinois can hang around a little bit, but I just think that Ohio State defense is just really something else. I mean, they seem like they've improved from last year almost, just really suffocating. And I think I agree with Jared. I could see a pick six or scoop and score, or at least a turnover that sets up their offense with a very short field. And, they end up winning this by like 20 points.
Yeah. And let me be clear. This is like very much a rat line. Like the fact that I'm so 100% sure on Ohio State. Like if you're a gambling person, you probably should go with Illinois, because it makes no sense that Illinois looked the way they did against Indiana. They allowed a ton of yardage against USC. And even last week with Purdue moved the ball on them. So I just have a tough time seeing Ohio State not blowing them out. So, but I'm an idiot. So that's why I'm just gonna go with what is obviously the pick, and it'll probably be wrong because that's why Vegas makes money off of me. Last game, Indiana goes to Oregon in a classic Big Ten clash. The Ducks are 7.5-point home favorites. Once again, I'm just not going to overthink this, and I'm going to go with Oregon. I think that they, at the very least, win 10 to 14 points, and I wouldn't be shocked if they start to really pull away at the end. But what are you guys thinking?
I really like Oregon on both sides of the ball. I'm with you. The one thing that intrigues me about this game is just knowing both coaches. I could see whoever has the lead at the end. I can see them really pushing for more. I could see Oregon being up by a touchdown with 30 seconds left, and they decide to throw it deep or run some trick play or something like that, just like Indiana would if they have the opportunity. But yeah, I think Oregon's the better team, and however it happens, I think they'll win by a little more touchdowns, so by at least 10 points or so. So give me Oregon.
Yeah, I like the Ducks in this one too. I think this will be a very competitive game, but I think the Ducks just have it's in Autzen, very noisy place. I think the crowd, I think that Oregon defense can rattle Fernando Mendoza a little bit and maybe force him to make a bad decision, leading to a turnover, or I think they come up with a couple really key plays that turn the tide of the game in their favor. So yeah, I'm thinking 10 to 14 point win. And also, how the hell did this not end up on NBC's Saturday night game? Why does it have to be at the same time as Penn State's game?
I was literally just going to mention that I think every week this season, whatever game I'm most intrigued by outside of Penn State plays in the same time slot as the Nittany Lions.
I guess I'll be quad boxing again on my
TV. So every big game I've really been interested in. I'm kind of just glancing over and trying to catch a play here and there. So it's just that type of year, I guess.
I suppose.
Yeah, the ABC game is Georgia at Auburn, and the NBC game is Michigan at USC. So Yeah, I'd rather the night game be Indiana at Oregon, but hey, this is how TVs work, and that we'll save it for another podcast. We're already an hour into this. I don't want to delve more into TV contracts and stuff and timing, but
is game day going to be at that game by chance? I actually
they are. Yeah,
they'll be at okay, Indiana, Oregon. That was my guess.
Yeah,
are they at Oregon? I thought they were at Texas for the Red River.
I don't think so. I think they're at Oregon. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I could have sworn I saw that they were going to be at Oregon because people were saying they're definitely going to get Glenn Powell to be the guest picker so that he can talk about.
Oh yeah, you're right. They are at Indiana and Oregon.
Okay. Yeah, they probably would have been. Texas didn't get upset last week, but I think that just kind of gave them another choice. Because I think they love doing it from the Texas State Fair, as anyone would.
Yeah. Now Texas Pathetic started the season ranked number 1 and already lost 2 games.
Yeah, could you imagine what that would be like to be a national title contender, then lose 2 games by the end of September?
And the thing with them, it's you have a 5-star quarterback that's supposed to be the guy, and you still can't win. Like, come on, Texas, be a real program. All right, that's all we got.
Not us.
Yeah, thank God it's not us. That's all we got. Another hour in the books of just this incredible Penn State season. As always, thank you to everyone who watched. Please subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube show if you have not. And yeah, for those of you that are listening on audio, because we are starting to really up the numbers on the podcast channels, please give us a 5-star review. So whether it's Apple Podcasts or whether it's Spotify, give it a 5-star review. I imagine that helps with like SEO. And if someone searches Penn State podcasts, ours will come up the more reviews we get. So please give us a 5-star review on there. And yeah, we will be back on Sunday, not Saturday. We'll be back on Sunday to recap whatever the hell Penn State does against Northwestern. Could be a big win, could be a big loss. That's just the beauty of the season. So we will see you guys then. Until then, stay safe and we'll see you.